Welcome, weird ones, to another journey into the uncanny. Today, we're peeling back the veil between cinema and reality, exploring real-life events that inspired folk horror films. These are the strange histories, whispered rumours, and forgotten tragedies that gave rise to some of the genre's most haunting stories. Witchcraft and the Wicker Man. Few films define folk horror as vividly as The Wicker Man from 1973. But the idea of human sacrifice inside a towering wicker effigy wasn't just a screenwriter's nightmare. Ancient Roman sources, most notably Julius Caesar, claimed the Druids of Britain and Gaul built massive wicker figures, filling them with captives and setting them ablaze as offerings to their gods. Whether that was propaganda or fact is debated, but the legend endured. By the time Anthony Schaffer wrote The Wicker Man, the myth had rooted itself so deeply in cultural memory that it felt like history, blurring fact and fiction in the most folk horror way imaginable. The Blair Witch and American folklore. Jump forward to 1999 and the Blair Witch Project. While The Witch of Burkittsville is pure invention, the filmmakers tapped into something older and more primal. The legend of the Blair Witch was stitched together from real pieces of Appalachian folklore, stories of women accused of witchcraft, children lost in the woods, and colonial fears of the wilderness itself. It's not hard to see echoes of Tituba and Sarah Good from the Salem Trials, or the dark fairy tales immigrants carried into the New World. In this case, the horror wasn't ripped from one event, but from a whole tapestry of real historical fears. And of course, the marketing for the Blair Witch was pure genius. A website dedicated to the film that made it seem like actual events, and the folklore it was built upon, with interviews with current residents and historic locales. All of this built a believable mythology that made the film a hit. The Witch and the Salem Trials. Robert Eggers' The Witch, 2015, is one of the most historically faithful folk horror films ever made. Its story of an exiled Puritan family haunted by witchcraft is drawn almost directly from the diaries, pamphlets and sermons of 17th century New England. The real Salem Witch Trials in 1692 and earlier accusations across Massachusetts Bay inspired nearly every detail, from the language spoken, to the panic over goats, to the notion that a child could sign the devil's book. Eggers didn't have to invent much. The paranoia and terror were already written into history. It is his faithfulness to the historical accounts that make the film the gem that it is. Blood on Satan's Claw and Unearthed Bodies. Blood on Satan's Claw from 1971 opens with a farmer ploughing up a strange, deformed corpse in the English countryside. While fictional, this chilling idea mirrors real discoveries. In rural Europe, unearthed skeletons often bore signs of unusual burial practices, skulls removed, bodies pinned down with stones, or limbs twisted unnaturally. These deviant burials were seen as witchcraft victims, vampires, or those cursed in life. Such archaeological finds sparked centuries of superstition and gave the film its macabre rural authenticity. Midsommar and Pagan rituals. Ari Aster's Midsommar, 2019, shocked audiences with its sun-drenched brutality. The film's rituals, the maypole dance, the 9-day festival, and the horrific sacrifices, weren't plucked from thin air. They're based loosely on real Scandinavian midsummer traditions, with threads of Norse myth and fertility rites woven in. Even the terrifying Etta Stupa, the cliff ritual of elders throwing themselves to their deaths, comes from Nordic legend, though debated by historians. Aster exaggerated, twisted and modernised these customs, but their folkloric bones remain visible beneath the flower crowns. Witchfinder General and Real Persecution. Michael Reeves' Witchfinder General, 1968, is directly inspired by history. The film dramatises the life of Matthew Hopkins, England's self-proclaimed Witchfinder General during the English Civil War. Hopkins was no fictional boogeyman. Between 1644 and 1647, he and his associates accused, tortured and executed more than 100 supposed witches across East Anglia. He claimed to work under official law, but in reality he profited from fear, turning superstition into a lucrative career. The brutality shown in the film was all too real, drawn from his infamous witch hunts. The real cunning folk behind folk horror. Beyond the films, countless folk horror stories draw from the lives of cunning folk, village healers, herbalists, and wise women who were sometimes revered, sometimes feared. Many face persecution, accusations, or violent ends. When we see witches, pagans, or rural cults on screen, we're often looking at refracted echoes of these very real people, misunderstood, marginalised, and mythologized. So much of folk horror thrives on the collision of history and imagination. A rumour in a Roman text, a trial transcript from Salem, a forgotten skeleton in a ploughed field, all of these fragments of reality become seeds for unsettling tales. When we watch folk horror films, we aren't just seeing fiction. We're watching the shadow history of human fear, ritual, and belief brought to life. And that, weird ones, is the truest horror of all. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And check out my books on Amazon. Be seeing you.